everybody, and welcome to the world's favorite youth baseball podcast, Clearing the Bases, with Coach Jimmy, Phil, and Jerry. I'm David Friedman. I want to thank you for coming along this ride with us. How are we doing today, Coach?
Doing good, Dave. Now it's winter time. Okay, today was cold.
Yeah, we had, we're up in, for those of you that haven't listened all along or don't know, we're up in upstate New York. And we had a couple of days this week where I think it almost touched 60 degrees. And now we're down in the 20s and teens coming up this week. So, yeah, we're finally in true winter.
Yeah, but the good thing is that it's Christmas time.
It's
supposed to be cold.
Time. Yes, indeed. We'll see if we get any of that white fluffy stuff coming down soon. But we'll see. So what's been going on in your world? How's your off-season week and a half going?
Yeah, really not much going on. A couple of college coaches camps that been going on the last couple of weeks. So I've been over there rubbing elbows with some of the college coaches, trying to pick their brain a little bit and see what they're looking for, how we could get our players better groomed for them. But really, other than that, not much going on.
All right. I'm sure your wife and family appreciate that you're actually around a little bit. So,
well,
that's a good thing.
That depends on how you look at it. My wife probably wants to throw me out of the house.
Oh, come on now. Can't be that bad yet. Maybe next week, but not this week. This week. There's too much work to be done this week. You got to be around.
That's true, too.
So, as always, we want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening. Our numbers have been going up every week, so we really, really appreciate that. We have listeners all over the world at this point. We appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you giving us feedback as well. Remember, we are clearingthebases@gmail.com, and we are at the CTB Show on Twitter. You can also find Jimmy and myself are each on Facebook on our own private pages. You're welcome to reach out to us there as well. We do post the show. And we really appreciate all the feedback and all the activity that's been going on there. We know a few people have reached out about coming on the show, and things are a little hectic, a little busy. This is the holiday show that we're doing here today, so we're holding off on having any guests for a little bit just to kind of get through the holidays, and then we'll look towards doing something like that in the new year.
Yeah, we did have a lot of people reach out. It seems that with each episode, more and more people are starting to reach out and give us their opinions, which we love. You know the way I am. I love the debate. Give me pros, cons, and I love to talk about it. But it just seems like it's getting to be more and more, and I love it because, again, it only means that more and more people are listening.
Yeah, no, it's great. And it's nice to know that people are interested in what we're talking about, because we're talking about youth baseball and we're talking about what's best for the kids. And that's something I do want to touch on just a little bit here without dragging the show down at all. But so one of the people that we got feedback from our last show, I think some of what we talked about, because Jimmy and I were pretty well on the same page with the topics that we did. But something that we talked about might have gotten a little misconstrued. So we just want to clarify, when we were talking about local facility in our area was starting up a team for essentially what appeared to be a travel team for 6 U players. And both Jimmy and I came out pretty strongly opposed to that idea. And somebody had commented back to us about basically discouraging kids from playing ball. And we just want to emphatically state that was never our intention. So definitely apologize if that was the message that came through. I thought we were pretty clear about that. It's not about not playing ball. We want all those kids to play ball. We want them to play ball. We want them to go to their little leagues in their towns and help, again, all the things we talk about over and over and over again with building the community and working from the ground up and learning all the basics. I think our objection to the program was in an entirely different part of the program, right, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, my feeling was that the 6-year-old kids, let's get them on the field. Let's train them. Let's work with them. Let's not make it competitive. So my aim was not the 6-year-old players. My aim was the organization trying to, what I felt was profit from 6U baseball players. I don't even want to say I don't see how, because you can't make a competitive game with 6-year-old players. You need to take 6-year-old players and train them and develop them and teach them the basics so that they become better baseball players eventually. But yeah, the target was never, ever the players. The target was the organization for what I felt was trying to make money off of 6-year-old kids.
Right, right. It's all a matter of what format, what's the appropriate format at that age, and should you be in a game where they're keeping score and keeping batting averages and things like that with kids that are really just learning how to walk properly at that point, run properly at that point. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of get that out of the way. I hope don't know if anybody else took it that way. Again, I thought we were pretty clear on our stance there, but felt the need to clarify.
Yeah, and I believe that most people should know by now that our intentions are always what's best for the kids. It's never ever. I mean, if you're able to take 4-year-old boys and start teaching them, the rudimentary baseball movements and stuff like that, then yes, I'm all for it. Okay, but don't tell me that you're going to take a bunch of 6-year-old boys, put them on a team, and go play competitive games. You don't have a pitcher, you don't have a catcher, you don't have a shortstop, you don't have anything.
Right, right. And it's not a matter, again, there might be one kid in the town that could maybe handle something like that, but you're just not going to convince me or Jimmy. I'm going to speak for you on this one. You're not going to convince us that it's a good idea.
Yeah,
you're just not.
Yeah, and also and then we could move on from here. Yeah, one of the things that I want to make sure that everybody understands is that when Dave and I speak about things, it's in general terms. We know that there's going to be a one-off. We know that there's going to be one 6-year-old player that may have the ability to play up with 7-year-olds or 8-year-olds. He might be able to do that, but that is a very rare occurrence. We're speaking in generalities all of the time.
Right. We're speaking to the masses, not the one-off. Next Derek Jeter or Chase Utley. We're talking to the masses of kids that we hope get involved with baseball at that age and continue to play. And as we've talked about ad nauseum, that's where the biggest problem is. Even talking with our friend Kevin Gallagher about the whole save the game, because the kids are not playing the game, they're not sticking with it, so then they're not watching it as they grow older. And this is, it's an issue. It's a major concern with baseball in this country, and we're not going to feed into it. So
absolutely,
just wanted to get that out of the way, and now we can talk about main topic for today. And this is again feedback that we got from one of our listeners. Really appreciate it. It's somebody that we interact with quite a bit online. So this is Justin from Sarasota, wrote us a very nice email, and we really appreciate it. Again, that's at clearingthebases@gmail.com, where you can get us if you don't want to put something publicly out there on Facebook or on our Twitter. So basically, Justin's background was he had a young son that was interested in playing, or he was interested in him playing, or a little bit of both, maybe in this case, but didn't really love it his first year or two playing it. So they took a break from it, and then decided to get into it a couple years later, where he was at the point where sounds like they were getting into kid pitch. So probably somewhere around 6-7 years old from what we can gather. So anyway, he went to sign up, and there wasn't enough coaches. There wasn't enough volunteers. They were going to have a team with 20 something kids on it. Obviously, anybody in the right mind knows that that's not going to work out well. So he reluctantly became a coach. He had some background for playing, had played in Little League and in high school. So he decided to go ahead and coach, and he threw himself into it, watching videos online and getting advice from other people on how to run practices and drills and things like that, to the point where other people in the league took a notice, and other parents and coaches really liked what he was doing. And he started to get a little bit of a following there, to the point where people in his league thought it'd be a good idea for him to join the board. and start making some changes with the local league, which again, if you go back and listen to many of our shows, but certainly I think it was maybe our second show that we did way back when was on what's wrong with town baseball. And so you know where Jimmy and I stand on that, that there are plenty of opportunities for improvement there. So Justin found some of the same things that we found when we tried to first get involved way back when with our leagues 12 years ago, whatever it was at this point. And so we want to talk a little bit about his experience, and we'll give you some flavor of what our experiences were, and we'll kind of take it from there.
Yeah, one of the things that Justin had mentioned in his email was about the board of directors and the problems that he saw, which, like you just said, it's funny because I guess it just doesn't change. I mean, the things that he explained were basically the same things that were happening, 10 years ago when I was there.
All the way across the country too. That's the other thing I was
right.
thinking of. It's not just the time, it's the location. It seems like not a surprise that this is what you run into.
Right. And, I thought that maybe it could have been, we're in New York, New York has a reputation of being a little harder on things than other parts of the country. So maybe it was that, but it was good to hear that, no, we're not alone in this, that it happens.
Right.
It happens everywhere. But one of the problems that I've always saw with these board of directors with the local leagues is they have to be structured as a business, I believe. Okay. And I'm probably saying that wrong. That's structured as, they have to be run as if they were a business. Okay. Where the goal is to satisfy your customers. And who are your customers? They're the players. I see too many people that join these boards or I shouldn't say I have seen many people that join these boards that their reasoning is only to get like maybe a better position for themselves or maybe their kids in the league, and they don't approach it that they're joining something that is supposed to be able to put together a good product to put out there. It's, again, it goes back to everything we say all the time, Dave. It's not about winning. And it seems to me that when I was involved, that's what the emphasis was on. How can me personally put myself in a good position so that I could take these kids and I could get on the field and I could go and beat the crap out of everybody else.
Right. And so to go back to just a little bit of our background, and this will add some, like I said, a little bit of flavor to what we're talking about here. So Jimmy and I live in the same hometown. Our kids grew up in the same hometown. So the same program, that's how we actually met, was through youth sports, our kids both playing on a same team. I think we actually met football first, and then it fielded over to baseball. And so Jimmy's son is a year older than mine in baseball age. And so he was in the program first. And I had Jimmy to thank / blame for getting me involved on our local league, because I don't know if you remember that, but
I don't, but
I sure as hell do, that it was, hey, you know what? You should help. You should come join the board. Try to join the board. We're going to make changes. And we're going to get this ship shape. And yeah. And then we found the reality, unfortunately, is the same thing as we said a decade later, all the way across the country, can be the same type of experience where you've kind of have the old guard and you have the new people coming in, and the new people coming in have ideas and want to change some methodologies and things like that. And we can get into some specifics of what we've seen. And unfortunately, a lot of the older, more, let's call them senior members of the board, like to fall back on one of my least favorite phrases, but this is the way we've always done it.
And Justin did mention that phrase also in his email, by the way.
Right. Right. So this is a thing where he has ideas, and I'm not saying, might have been some stuff that we gave him, might have been some stuff he saw on Facebook, some stuff he came up with on his own, but apparently he's running into the same speed bumps, we'll call them, that we used to run into with members on board. But this is the way we've always done it, and not recognizing that our signups had dropped year over year over year. You look at the historical numbers. Well, why is that? Oh, it's because of travel team. Oh, it's because of soccer. Oh, it's because of video games. Like, doing one doesn't prevent you from doing another. That was something, this would be one of the biggest, I guess we'll jump right in. One of the first topics was that, like, why are the league's populations getting smaller year after year? And I was a big believer is because we're not changing with the times. We're not making adjustments. We're doing things from back in the day where you could just dictate, this is how it's going to be. Well, society doesn't work that way anymore. And you have a decision to make. You can keep fighting that, or you can look at it and go, okay, we need to make changes. Maybe we don't need to make wholesale changes, but we need to at least make adjustments.
Right. One of the things that I've heard locally, like you said, in terms of making changes locally, and I think we had talked about it on another show earlier, is one of the local little leagues is having T-ball for 4-year-olds, and it's free. There's no fee to play. Those type of things where you could see where that league is trying something different to try and bring kids into the league to start playing the game and possibly develop that passion or love for the game that we talk about all the time. But our experience has been the people that were on the board just were not open to change. I don't ever remember being in a board meeting and saying, okay, guys, listen, we have a problem. Our enrollment is dropping. Anybody have any ideas what we can do to start bringing kids back to the game? What could we do? I don't, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Dave, correct me. Did you ever recall having a meeting like that? I don't.
No, I believe you're right. I don't believe that we actually had conversations. I know what we did was we tried to react to the reality that our numbers were dropping down, and we did try to make some changes to kind of the structure of the leagues because we were going to have so few kids. So instead of having 8 teams in one league and 7 teams in another league, we wound up having to kind of readjust the age groupings a little bit and things like that. Right. So we were being reactive, but we were not brainstorming, and we were not, quite frankly, as a group, we were not looking for solutions to that as a problem. I think we were acknowledging the problem, but there was a lot of excuses that were coming up about that, and it was as though there was nothing that we could do about that. Let's just focus on what do we do now, and even that became arguments, as opposed to just keep doing it the way we're doing it. So, and I'll give you the example I remember was, so we had from the ages 9 to 12, we had 3 different leagues. We had all the 9-year-olds. So starting at the top, we had like the 12-year-olds that were all-stars the year before, and the 11-year-olds that were all-stars the year before in one league, and then filled in with like the rest of the 12-year-olds. And then we had a middle league where we had kind of the kids that weren't quite ready for that major league. I think that was the American League, and then we had the National League was the kids that didn't quite make it. So we had like the 10-year-old all-stars, and then kind of the 11s and 12s that weren't good enough to play in that top league, and then we had the 9 and 10-year-olds. So we had 3 leagues amongst those 4 years. And I know at one point we actually dropped that down to 2 because we had so few kids. We were going to have like 3 teams in one of the leagues.
Yeah,
and it was going to be ridiculous. They were going to play each other 8 times during the year.
Right. And that goes back to really the crux of the problem, where nothing, from what you just explained, nothing was done to say how are we going to bring these numbers up. What we did is said, let's just shuffle stuff around so that we just change.
Right.
Maybe it was just changing for the sake of change. I don't know. But, and one of the things that was brought out in the email was, and something that you and I experienced a lot, was the fighting that goes on and the arguing that goes on between board members. there was very, very little when there was an issue. There was very, very little civil conversation about how to fix it. It was always like you said, this is the way we always did it. So I think what Justin is bringing out here is seems like he has the same problems that we had.
Right.
How do you fix it? What's the way to make this better? I mean, I have my ideas, but I don't know if you want to take the lead on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know you look at like what you tried to do with our league was bring in some like-minded people. And when I say that, I don't mean people that just were sitting there agreeing, you and I on the show, we don't agree with everything that is said, but more like-minded in that you're open to the idea that there's a better way to do things. And yes, even as simple of a concept as that was like revolutionary back then. Because I know myself and there was at least two other guys that we all came in at the three of us at least came in at the same time. I may be forgetting another one or two. And I don't know, what do we have? 15 people on the board, maybe something like that, give or take, with the different positions that are out there. So we came in, and just to get an idea of how little involvement that there was, and we had a good size league. I'm going to say we had upwards of 500 kids, 700 kids, something like that. Again, it's been a long time, but I'm thinking like, so we pulled from quite a large group. When you go on to any type of board, something like this, you think about, for our listeners, any type of group that you're in, generally when you want to participate and actually hold a membership, an actual position, they're generally elected positions where you may have to you would typically run against somebody else and state your case as to why you would be better than the person that was there, or if there's multiple people coming. I know the time that we came in, we didn't have to run against anybody. Basically, again, if it was three of us, it's like, all right, well, we have three open positions and there's three people. So which one of you three wants this position? Which one of you three wants the other position? Right. So, and I can tell you, I think I was on the board probably 5 years, and that stayed the same / got worse as we went along. Because I think even by the last year that I was on the board, several of us wound up taking multiple positions over because we had so little community involvement at that point.
Right. Now, years ago, my older brother was involved with another little league that was a little ways from where we are, and they had standards and requirements for who could sit on that board. It just couldn't be anybody that just threw their hat in the ring. And I don't recall, and I don't want to offend anyone when I say this, but I do remember, and I'm pretty sure I'm right, is that like in order to be president of that league, you had to be a professional business person. And it could have been a business leader, it could have been a doctor, it could have been a lawyer, it could have been a dentist. It had to be somebody that was in a position in their work life that was a leadership role. So somebody that knew how to lead. And one of the problems that I saw in our league were the presidents that we had during the time I was involved were not leaders. They were definitely not leaders. And I don't know, maybe your experience was the same. I know that we were there for a while together, but then, there were times where we weren't.
Yeah, no, I mean, ours, so you're saying that was your brother's hometown league that had that,
correct,
that rule in there. Yeah, and I don't know that I would even be in favor of that necessarily. I know we definitely didn't have that. I mean, I was quite surprised by who the president was when I joined the board. He definitely, I mean, I wouldn't say he wasn't a leader. He wasn't an effective leader. That's for sure. He wasn't well-spoken, that type of thing. So, I mean, there's obviously there's different things you could put in there. That's one of those things. I think that becomes a slippery slope because, it becomes very difficult because you're talking about it's all volunteer positions, right? So, just like with coaches, where well, that guy's a bad coach, so he shouldn't be allowed to coach. Okay, well, who's going to step up and take his place? Oh, we don't have anybody to take his place. Okay, so then we have to keep this guy in there. And we ran into the same types of situations with board members where there was people that clearly should not have been there, in my humble opinion, should not have been there. And yet, again, when you have very little community involvement, and it's kind of a situation I think of like a snake eating its own tail, where you don't have that much involvement because the thing has been run poorly for so many years that people don't want to join up. Well, we need more people to join up so we can make those changes. Well, but I don't want to join up because it's such a dysfunctional organization. And so you were able to sucker me and a couple other people into jumping in, and then we immediately would have those banging your head against the wall situations.
But you see, this is another thing that I still to this day cannot understand about what happened there when you and I were involved. We were bringing people on that had good baseball experience, had the right attitude, had the right objective in mind, that it was all about the kids. We wanted parity in the league. We wanted to make it so that everybody had fun. We had a zero tolerance policy for unruly parents, unruly coaches, and that type. We all believe that. The people that I know that I tried to get on the board, guys such as you and a few others that
Right.
That came on. Why were I never understood why we were never able to gain control of the league, because we were the only ones, in my feeling, I could be 100% wrong, but we were the only ones there that really were there for the right reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say the only ones, but no, that might be a little well, but it does come down to leadership. Okay, so first of all, you have a president, and we had rules in place where you had to be on the board for X number of years. And again, this is over a decade ago, so I don't remember what that was, but it might have been 4 years, 5 years, something like that. Does that sound
Something
familiar?
like that, yeah.
Yeah. So which was good because you should have experience with how the league works. How the league works now. Again, you shouldn't be making changes to something unless you understand how it works to start with. So you did have to be on the board for a number of years before you could be vice president, and then you had to be, I think you had to be maybe on the executive committee before you could be president or something like that. So we had some steps in there, but so what you had was almost like, I hate to use the term, but almost like the good old boys network, where these guys were all of the same mindset, and that mindset was, this is how we've always done it, so we're going to continue to do it. So how come you can't get traction? Because you sit there and you propose something and you get into a discussion, which turns into an argument. And then by the time you go to vote, you've got people that are, I don't know, afraid of aggravating the sitting president for some reason because they had so much control at that point. It was things like that. There was multiple times where, we tried to implement changes in terms of coaches had to participate in clinics, right? We wanted them to do the certain clinics where they were going to be able to teach their kid. Everybody was going to be able to teach their kids the same type of methodology that was purported. We were a Babe Ruth league, so they had things through Babe Ruth and Cal Ripken that we wanted everybody to do, and everybody would joke around about it. And if they didn't do it, there was no consequences and things like that. So a lot of it was just the basic structure of the board being so much of the old guard, and everybody's vote counting the same, having the same weight. If you've got 15 guys in the room and there's only, all right, great. There was yourself and there was another one or two, I think, that came in sort of the same class as you that I'm thinking of. And you had myself and like maybe another two guys. It takes multiple years before you can get that changeover. And I think what we saw was several people leave. I think that came in with you already got so kind of disgusted with everything. So we didn't have It wasn't, even though
Well,
we might have had three new people a year, but by the third year, a couple of those people already
we're
dropped
gone.
out. So we never had the numbers, is really what it boiled down to in a lot of cases.
Right. Well, the other thing too is, and this would play into it, if you were a father who had three boys, you were going to be there a lot longer than somebody like me that had two girls and then one boy. So I was really there for the time that my son was playing, and then my belief is that any board in a local league would be better. And I know this is not practical. However, the board would be better off if they had people on that board who didn't have kids in the league, that had nobody in the league, that were baseball people that knew what to do. And after my son aged out, I stayed on the board. You were there.
Yep. Yep.
I was treated like I don't know, like the worst thing on the face of the earth. What are you doing here? And I'm like, well, it's my community. I want to help.
Right.
Oh, kind of ran me out.
Yeah, I remember that distinctly. And it's funny to say it, because there was two members on the board. So, and again, we're not going to drag anybody's name through the mud or anything like that, but I'm sure you know who I'm speaking of. But there was two members on the board that were in prominent positions that did not have kids in the program anymore when we came in, and our kids were younger. When I got in, I think my kid was probably 8, maybe 9 when I first started on the board. Had been in the league since he was, I think at that point we started at 6, I think. Yeah, that sounds right. I think 6 was T-ball, 7 and 8 was coach pitch, and then we started up with regular little league age at 9. Now, of course, those ages are all pushed way forward down to 4 and 5. But back then, that's what it was. So I think my kid was 8 or 9 when I started on the board. So I had a younger son, so I was planning on being there for another probably 10 years at that point. And there was two guys who did not have kids in the program, or maybe the one guy, the kid was in the big league, 17 years old, something like that. And they were two of the worst guys.
Right.
They were two of the worst guys in terms of, this is how we always did it. We can do no wrong. We, meaning like the two of them, could do no wrong. If they disagreed with something, it wasn't going to get done. To the point where one of the guys, I think you were still there, because he also coached a team, or he would coach a team or two, especially if the league needed, they didn't have enough volunteers. He would take a team. So again, it was a weird dichotomy where in some ways I really had respect for the guy because he was still putting in time and effort, and he didn't have the catch, but his thought process was just terrible in a lot of ways for the programs. And he got into a fight with a coach of the other team of like a 10-year-old, 9 and 10-year-old league, and he to the end swore he did nothing wrong.
Right.
And I'm like, you can't have done nothing wrong if you got into a physical altercation with another coach from another team. I don't care how big of a jerk the guy was. You can't then say I did nothing wrong. We're still talking about a 9, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, whatever it was, little league game.
Goes back to what I was saying about leadership. Now, a leader would never do that.
Right. Would never do that, and would never hold up for that, for somebody else doing it. That's the other thing. It's not just the leadership aspect of that person wouldn't do it. You can't put up with that.
Right.
And I think he was removed as a coach, but he stayed on as a board member. And I remember having that argument with some of the other board members. What message are we sending?
Right.
So, and get him voted down. And that was, again, the beginnings of the frustration. So back to solutions. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to add something in there to just kind of solidify my point, what I was saying about being somebody who doesn't necessarily have a kid in the league, because I looked it up in the Babe Ruth, Cal Ripken, I guess they call it their president's handbook, which is, their rules and regulations and their suggestions. And that's another thing that I don't like is the word suggestions, because that leaves it way too open. But anyway, they're talking about the president's position, the president of the league. And it says it is highly recommended a local league president not be connected with any team such as a manager or coach, and not be an umpire of his league. So what better person to put in there than somebody who doesn't have a kid in the league?
Right. Right. No, absolutely. Ideally, that should have worked out well. It was just there. Obviously, that can't be. And I know you're not suggesting that that's the only criteria, but
No.
that should be a decent starting point. And it's not to say that if you have kids in the league, you can't be looking at it altruistically, because I like to think that for overwhelming majority of the time, that was the way I handled it. There was multiple decisions that I agreed with on the board that did not benefit me and my kids that were there. And but that's just unfortunately the nature of most people, is not necessarily to go that route, especially with baseball. Seems to attract, and maybe it's the same in other sports, I don't know, I only got heavily involved in baseball, where it seems the people that go on the board, it seems to attract the people that are enjoying the power a little bit too much, we'll say.
Yes, and I believe, Dave, that's why they go there. They go there for that power. When I was coaching the All-Star team, I was coaching at the time the president's son was on my team. So after the first year, he didn't like the way I was handling playing time with his son. Now, his son was getting just as much playing time as everybody else, but he didn't like it. So what does he do? He appoints himself as one of my assistant coaches. These are the things that just should never happen. And it worked out. I mean, I made it because I didn't want to cause any problems in front of the boys. I just didn't want the boys to see that type of stuff. So I made it work. But that's a ridiculous thing. You're the president, so I'm just, all right, I'm going to decide I'm coming to coach with your team. And I fought it. And I told him, I said, no. I said, I don't want you there. And he's the president. He put himself there. What was I going to do? Lock him in his car?
Right. So yes. And on top of that, if you recall, just back something else that you just already talked about, that anybody on the board should not be involved in the league that they're in. He was the president of the league. He was also a coach in the league that his son was playing in. Exactly. So again, when you look at if there is any kind of discrepancy, and I remember having this discussion on the board, and it was uncomfortable because you're having the discussion in front of the person who this is directly affecting, and they are going to take it personally. And as much as I can remember emphatically stating that this is, before any issues happened or anything else, this was in the beginning of the season, where we said, okay, our bylaws of our league stated this, that you cannot be involved. You can't be on the board to make decisions for the league that you are actively participating in, that you have kids in, which makes sense because obviously the human nature is you're going to do things that are to your own team and your own kids' benefit. That's the nature of the beast. We all want to protect our kids and want the best for it, blah, blah, blah. So, but yes, so first he was able to be the president when his kid was in the league. He was able to make decisions regarding that league that he was coaching on. He was a head coach in that league. And these are things that we said, okay, we're not supposed to do that. And it was like, and it was taken as a personal attack against it. I'm like, this has nothing to do with you and your name. It's the position. It's the title. You're not supposed to be, because I think he also ran the league that you guys were in. He was the league director, I think, for that league also. So he was, I think, if I remember correctly, he was the league director of that league that you were in. And he was the president of the board, which you're not supposed to be, because obviously you're only going to agree with yourself when it comes time to vote on things. Right.
Yeah.
And his kid was in the league. So yeah, that was,
wasn't he was also coaching a team in that.
That's
so
what I'm saying.
He was a coach, he was a director, and he was the president of the league.
And he was the president of the league. Yes. And we allowed that to happen. And when I say we, you and I were both part of it. And that's when you look back and you go, how the hell did that happen? You go, right. Well, two factors. One, we got outvoted. And two, we didn't have somebody else to step in and take the place.
Right.
That's the other thing. So again, and I think this is one of these this is one of the shows that you and I could do for 4 hours talking about all the problems. So let's let's
But
get into, let's start trying to focus on what we said 40 minutes ago we were going to do. Start focusing on what can be done in these
and
cases.
I think it was good to go through what we just did, only to let people know, and especially Justin, who wrote the email, that, yeah, you're not alone. This has been going on for years and years and years. And, we've talked about it many times. We have what we think are I don't want to say solutions, but ways to make it better. But it takes people that understand what this is about to get involved before anything is going to change. The more that we keep doing the same thing over and over again, because that's the way we've always done it, it's not working, and it hasn't worked.
Yes. And one of my famous sayings, I use it all the time at work. I use it in my personal life, is I'm not a big believer that misery loves company. I know it's a trite old saying. So I don't know if that brings any comfort or solace to our listeners, that it is similar or can be the same in other areas of the country and other leagues and through different time frames. But it doesn't mean that we give up, and it doesn't mean that we stop looking for solutions. But yes, you have to understand how something's working now to take it apart and then say, okay, how do we move forward? How do we get this going forward? So one of the biggest things that I think is kind of what you tried to do. And like I said, it's something I don't know if it can be done as a revolution. It does to some degree have to be an evolution of getting that new blood in on the board. Now, you have to get like-minded people involved. And again, can't stress this enough. Doesn't mean that you guys are going to agree on everything, but it's certainly to be open to the idea of making changes. And, why else are you joining? If you're just joining to get the title and to, I don't know, go to a meeting once every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever it is and have a plaque with your name on it that says I'm the, director of major purchases, or I'm the head of the umpires or whatever, don't. But if you are interested in doing it, it just go into it with open eyes. It's a thankless task. It really is. There's not a lot of people that are going to know that you're responsible for helping to make this great change. But that's, you have to be ready to fight the good fight and put in the time and put in the effort to get things done. So the biggest thing I think is doing that, because it's probably in most cases easier to get new open-minded people in than it is to change kind of an old dog, teaching an old dog new tricks type of thing, and getting people that have been there for a long time to all of a sudden do a 180 and start looking at things in a new and a different way.
Yeah. I also think that a lot of people don't get involved because they feel that they don't know the game of baseball as much as they feel like they don't know the game well enough to be on the board of directors. So I think a lot of people shy away for that reason. And my feeling is you don't have to be a baseball person. You really don't to be on the board of directors. Because most of the stuff is pretty much common sense. You as a person on the board of directors is not going to be in charge with developing baseball players. I mean, it may be another thing that you're doing, but it's not solely what you're doing on that board. It doesn't, you're not doing that, but you're trying to create an environment that's good for all kids to learn. And to me, most of that stuff is, one, most of it is common sense. Two, most of these leagues have these president's handbooks or these bylaws, like you said, that you could follow and implement. You just need some strong people that are going to say enough is enough. This league is being run poorly. Is all we do is come to board meetings and fight with each other. There's fighting on it. I mean, there's all you hear about is fighting. People fighting with umpires, coaches fighting with other coaches, board members fighting in board meetings. What are we talking about?
Right. Losing sight of, at the end of the day, we're supposed to be doing it for the kids. We're supposed to be the adults in the room. We're supposed to be making decisions to get the league better, which will get more kids interested in playing, and the league can then grow from there. Right. But yeah, so if we can get getting some fresh blood in there that are going in with eyes open, with ears open to learn how things are being done, but to also be able to recognize that, okay, hey, we need to make some changes. This is, and here's what we do. Be open to other leagues' ideas. If something's working someplace else, like, there was so many times ideas were brought in because they saw that something was working someplace else. Like, oh, no, we're not going to do it that way. And like, okay, we can just put our head in the sand and just watch our numbers continue to dwindle. And all that, I know it's something else near and dear to your heart. I know at one point it was like the main concern of the board for a couple of years seemed to be, how was our 12U All-Star team doing in the districts? And it's like, and it was this philosophy of, and this is where I didn't want to get back into other problems. Like I said, we could do a 4-hour show on this.
I'm going to cut you off for a second, though, because I do have something to your point, what you just said about learning from other leagues, because this happened. And when we were playing in the state tournament, there was another town in upstate New York, and you probably know who I'm talking about, who had several teams always in the state tournament. They had a white team and a green team. And yep. I did a little research to say, well, wait a minute. They seem to be doing things right. They're putting, quality teams on the field, never see their coaches out of order at all. Their parents were all very well behaved. There was no problems. I was like, this is something that we should look into. So I did. And lo and behold, they actually have, or they did at the time, they had their, I guess it was like their bylaws. It was their rules and regulations. And it was quite lengthy. And I downloaded it and I went through it and I brought it to a board meeting. I said, guys, they're very successful. Let's take some stuff from this and see if we can implement it into our league to make our league better. And forget about it. I was shot down like I was a mass murderer.
I remember that, actually. Now that you're saying that, I recall that. I remember going through because it was lengthy. And I remember, I think you had emailed it out to everybody ahead of time so everybody could look at it. Of course, 70% of the guys didn't even open it up. And that's the thing. If you're going to go into anything that you're doing with complete closed-mindedness, how far are you going to get? If what you're doing is not truly working, and you just, again, definition of insanity, just keep doing the same thing, expecting the same results. So, yeah, I mean, that's a big thing, is looking at what other leagues, not just in your local area, but around. You could go anywhere in the country. Just because somebody's in Chicago doesn't mean it won't work in Texas or vice versa or whatever. Sure. And it's not even like, okay, again, I remember this is not like, okay, this is what we need to file. This is our new manual. It's like, no, let's look at what pieces of this we can take and use and say, okay, maybe we don't want to change this, but we should look at changing this and that type of thing. So, but again, I think that one again boiled down to timing, where there just wasn't enough of the newer blood on the board to get anything like that through.
Right. You have to have the same thing that we talk about in coaching. So your top 4 officials on most of these board of directors are your president, your vice president, your secretary, and your treasurer. Those 4 people have to have a growth mindset. They have to be willing to learn. They have to be open to new ideas. And you know what? If you're running your league and there's no problems and everything is going fine, then great, leave it alone. But I bet you there's very few leagues in the country that are like that, where at least a little bit of tweaking here and there, or another way of doing something, should not be looked at. It should be. You should look at different. But again, I'm rambling. It goes back to everybody on there has to have that ability to keep learning, not to just be very closed-minded. And I think that's where you start. So if you put someone in there as president, vice president, secretary, treasurer that do not have that growth mindset, you're setting yourself up for failure. If they go in there and they're closed-minded, because again, that's my experience. What I saw was those people that were in those positions, they didn't want to hear anything from anybody else. All they want to do is walk into the meeting and say, what are we doing for fundraising? When are we picking the all-star team? And who's going to be the all-star manager? That was the board of directors meeting.
Right. Yeah. So it was a little bit of sharing of information from each league and each different department, so to speak. But there really wasn't any problem solving going on there.
No, there was yelling
So
and screaming.
right, right. So yeah, so that's a big thing, is getting people in there, and it's easier said than done, but it's you got to shake the tree. You have to do it. You're sending out emails to every parent in the league. Everybody signs up. I'm sure every league has the ability to do online signups, and I'm sure most of you guys are doing, especially the last couple of years with COVID. But so you're doing online sign up, which means you have everybody's email address. So you do blast emails. Do it once a week for a month before the next board meeting, type of thing. Like, hey, you got to, if you want to be involved, you want to see the league get better, come to the board meeting, get involved, join up. That's the thing. Like I said, by the time it was at the point where I needed to get off the board, I said several of us took on multiple positions because there was so little involvement at that point.
Yeah.
And our league hadn't dropped. Our numbers had gone down, but we had started to stabilize because we were able to get some changes made that were for the better. Again, after 3 or 4 years, now you do have enough young blood there, and the old guard was stepping aside, so we were able to get some changes made. But then it also boils down to, are you getting the right people in there? Because there's the people that are there for selfish reasons, because they want their kids' all-star team to do better. They want their kid's team to get the advantage. And again, I don't want to go down that road of all the problems, but as far as the solutions go, so Justin or any of the other good friends of the show that we've talked to, all the listeners out there, talk amongst the other parents. When you're there to watch your kid play, because you certainly don't have to be a coach. That's the other thing. Almost everybody on the board, maybe I'll say everybody that was on the board when I was there, with the exception of like maybe 1 or 2 people, were also coaches in the league.
Yes.
And some of us coached multiple teams in the league, because I had 2 kids in the league and I was coaching multiple kids. So doing all of that and being on the board, it starts to run you thin. It's a volunteer thing. It's not supposed to be a full-time job. So getting people involved that are not already coaches, that to me is a huge part of it. Right. Because again, they're less likely to try to do things that are for the good of their team. They're more likely to try to do things that are for the good of the league. And oftentimes those can be 2 separate ideas. Right?
I think most of the time they are.
Yeah.
The other thing too is it becomes a vicious cycle, because the board is so unruly and there is so much disarray. The good people that might want to get involved shy away from it, because they say, wait a minute, I'm not going to get involved in this, because all they do is fight and yell and scream at each other. I don't need that. So it's difficult. I mean, there's no way that I'm going to sit here and say that there's an easy solution to this. There isn't, until the world gets some kind of awakening where they understand that this is just about the kids. Stop trying to manipulate things so that it's benefit for you or benefit for your team, or all of these selfish reasons. It's about the kids.
Right. So getting new people in there, getting people involved that, again, don't have necessarily a vested interest in specific teams, all-star teams. That was the other thing. Almost everybody that was on the board, their kids were the better players in the league, so they were all-star players. So then you get arguments from parents about, well, why are the all-stars being run this way? Oh, because everybody that's making decisions are kids who's parents of kids that are already on the all-star team. So that would be the big thing to me, is probably getting as many people there. And again, each of the leagues around the country certainly could be run differently. What is the structure of your board? What are the structure? What positions do you guys have? Should you have different positions available? Again, look at other leagues and what they're doing. You want to look into how are board members selected? Is there an election process, or is it just if you happen to show up on the right night, now you're on the board? So you want to look at that, but encouraging parents, more parents to get involved. Are your meetings open to the public? Okay. So that people can come and watch a meeting and see what happens here. Those kinds of things. But the league should be encouraging parents to go. Again, we'll use our old league as an example. We met in a room, say there was 15 of us in there. I think it probably held 17 people.
Right.
So,
right.
It was like, because I remember, again, my kid was in the league for 2 or 3 years before I went. When you first approached me about getting on the board, I didn't even know what the board was. I didn't even know it existed. I didn't know when the meetings were. And I'm like,
right.
and I'm pretty interested in baseball. So,
right.
It was like, what are you guys doing? What are you doing as a league to get the word out that this is important and this is where the decisions are made? And you don't like what's going on there? Get involved, join up.
Right.
And it doesn't mean it's going to become a full-time job, but come to a meeting or two, see how it's going on. If you don't like what's happening, get involved and run for a position. That was a thing where there were so few actual elections the years I was there. It was like, if there was somebody in a position, nobody would run against them.
Right.
Because it would get awkward. It would be like, okay, well, there's a treasurer position. I want to be the treasurer. Well, we already have a treasurer. Why don't you take the equipment position? Because that position's open. Okay, but I don't want to be the equipment manager. I want to be the treasurer. Right. I have a banking background. I do accounting. I could be, I think I would be good as a treasurer. Well, why don't you start over here? Those types of things go on. Kind of almost like, and it gets very awkward when you're sitting in a little room with somebody and you want to run for their position. So you have to be a little tough about that stuff too.
If I remember correctly with that though, didn't you have to be nominated to run? Didn't they nominate people? I don't even remember.
Yeah, but you showed up, you got nominated because there was nobody.
No. I meant in a perfect world, like, if there were 2 or 3 people that were running for a specific position, they would have to be nominated. The board would have to approve for them to run or something like that. I don't remember, but
I believe so. And actually, if I remember correctly, I was actually against that, because how else do you keep the old boys mentality? Like, okay, somebody on the board would have to nominate somebody new to run against the person that's sitting next to them.
Well, that's why I brought it up.
Right,
yeah.
right. So that's where, again, so you got to look at the things that are in your bylaws that are from 30 years ago and doesn't make sense today. Again, because a lot of it doesn't.
In a perfect world, I would love to go to the next local board meeting and say, introduce myself. How's everybody doing? I want to run for president of your league. I would get chased out of that room with bats.
Of course. Of course.
everybody.
You have quite the reputation around here, so that's a bad example. But
Gee, thanks for that.
Yeah. I can't I can't go a whole show without making a comment like that. So yeah, I mean that would be the thing. These things are supposed to be open. It's supposed to be a community-led program.
Yeah,
is it? So like I said, look in the mirror, see if it is.
And to be honest with you, if I thought that was feasible, I would definitely go and I would do it. I would volunteer my time to go and help run that league to try and make it a better place. But again, and just like Justin explained, somebody like me, they would run out of there in a heartbeat, because they would know that I'm going to do whatever's best for the boys, regardless. And yourself included, if let's say you and I both said, look, me and Dave want to run for president and vice president and try to make wholesale changes in the league for the better, we would be run out of there, because we would be impartial. We would be doing it for all of the right reasons. So I guess what I'm getting at is that it's just something that, to do it the right way, to make that type of change to it, is just very, very difficult. And I can't come up with a solution other than to try to find people to run the league that are not coaches, managers involved in the league.
Right. And like I said, I mean, the way most I would bet most bylaws do have something in there about some kind of tenure. So yeah, maybe you have to start as a lower level board position, and then you can move up to be on the executive board or get treasurer, president, vice president, secretary is typically the executive board. So maybe you have to do that for a year or two, and then maybe you can get in to try to run to be vice president or president, something like that. And there's some merit to having those kinds of rules in there. But those are the types of things that you got to look for. So at this point, I think we want to throw it out to the listeners, throw it out to the community. Let us know. Let us know what you think. What are you doing in your leagues? What has worked? What hasn't worked in terms of this? How do you try to get, I don't want to say wholesale changes, because sometimes it may be adjustments that should be made, because we should be looking at that too. It's not like we're not always looking to reinvent the wheel. Some things are working well, doesn't mean that they can't work better. So
right.
we want to get ideas on that as well. Let's all pitch in. We can only get better for it. Get some good open discussion and honest dialogue about it. And let us know what you think. Reach out to us. Shoot us a note at clearingthebasses@gmail.com. Let us know on Twitter at the CTB Show. That's at the CTB Show on Twitter. Jimmy and myself, both with our Facebook pages, Jimmy Filangiri, David Friedman. You can look us up. You'll find us. So, yeah, let us know what kind of ideas you've got going on out there. Like you said, what has worked for you? What have you tried to do that maybe wasn't so successful? Because we can always learn from our mistakes just as well as we learn from our successes. Sometimes we learn more from that. So we definitely want to open up to the community. Like we continually say, don't want it to just be Jimmy and I sitting here talking to each other. We want to know what you guys have to say as well.
I would really love to hear from people out there that have leagues that are running well. I would really like, because we know what the problems are. Like, like I said, Justin sent the email, the problems that he's experiencing are the same ones that, we experienced, years ago when we were on our local board. So apparently things are not changing. I would love to hear from people that would be able to say, hey, Jimmy, Dave, this is the way we do it, and our numbers are rising and everybody's happy. And I know that you're not going to make everybody happy, but if you can get the majority of your league to be happy and enjoy and have fun, boy, I'd love to hear from you.
Let's help each other out. Let's build, just as our community, and you want to build your own communities back where you live. Let's continue to build this community that we've been working on here. And let's pitch in and help everybody out.
Yeah, I'd like I said, I know I'm repeating myself, but I would love to hear it so that we can help. I mean, let's face it, our goal from day one when we started this podcast was, to have the exchange of ideas to try and make the youth baseball world a better place. And it's a pretty powerful medium where we do have a lot of people that listen to us, and it's growing all the time. So listen, if you're out there and it's going well and things are good, talk to us. Maybe we'll bring you on the show. We could let everybody know how to do it. And hopefully, if we can change one league somewhere in the country, then we did our job.
Right. And hopefully that one can start to spread, because we'd start sharing the success stories, and maybe we can do what we're trying to do again, like our friend Kevin Gallagher, saving the game, right? It starts with us. It starts as a grassroots thing. It starts with the youth baseball players. It has to work upwards from there. So let us know. Let us know how you're feeling. So that's going to do it for this week's show. Remember, please rate, review us when you're listening. Go on to your Apple Podcasts, your Spotify, whatnot. Review us on there. Give us the 5 stars. It's really important. Subscribe to the show. We want our download numbers to keep going up so more people can hear what we have to say and join in on the fun that we have with our community. It's been awesome, and we want to see it continue to grow. And always remember, it's only the two main things in life that we can control at all times are our own effort and our own attitude. Go into everything with a positive mental attitude, PMA. Give it 100% effort. Good things will follow. Final thoughts, Coach?
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody what we say all the time is that it has to be fun for the boys, for the kids. I shouldn't say just boys, because there are girls that play Little League also. It has to be fun for the kids. Let's do the best that we can. we don't need to fight with each other as board members. We want to try and create a fun environment for everybody, for the parents too. I mean, go to the games, enjoy yourselves, laugh, joke, have a good time. That's what it's supposed to be about. So let's keep that in mind, that in the end, it's all about the fun. So, and like usual, I'll leave you with, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.